Here are the top stories for today, May 21, 2021. Going for the gold. The government approves the priority vaccination of athletes for the Tokyo Olympics and the Southeast Asian Games. More sectors are also included in the vaccination priority list. Strengthening faith, religious gatherings in Metro Manila are now allowed at 30% capacity as the region is currently under GCQ with heightened restrictions. Help non-techie persons get vaccinated. Local government units are ordered to find ways to register seniors and those who don't have internet access for inoculation. And a ceasefire brokered by Egypt between Israel and Palestinian group Hamas takes effect, putting a temporary halt to the relentless exchange of fire that left deaths and a trail of destruction. Good day, I'm Marita Muaje. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. Our top story tonight, more sectors are included in the government's priority list for the COVID-19 vaccination drive. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque made this announcement earlier today. Speaking at the Laging Handa briefing, Roque says the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases approved the priority vaccination of athletes, coaches, and delegates for the Tokyo Olympics in July and the Southeast Asian Games in Vietnam in November. The Philippine Olympic Committee earlier said Vietnam is enforcing a no vaccine, no play policy for the biennial games. Frontline employees of the Commission on Election and those in the business process outsourcing industry are now included in the A4 priority group. LPG dealers, retailers, and attendants are also included in the priority group A4.2. Meanwhile, a small working group was also created to study and form protocols on the inbound international travel of fully vaccinated persons. Religious services in Metro Manila would be allowed up to 30% seating capacity. This after the Metro Manila Council agreed to further relax restrictions on religious activities. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said local chief executives have the final say on increasing the venue capacity of religious gatherings as long as these would not exceed the 30% allowable venue capacity.
Nagpulong po ang inyong IATF kahapon kung saan nagsabi ang Metro Manila Council na pinapayagan ng mga mayors ng NCR ang religious gathering sa 30% venue capacity. Kung matatandaan po ninyo, una nang pinayagan ng IATF ang religious gatherings na hanggang 10% ang venue capacity sa ilalim ng General Community Quarantine with heightened restrictions. Ngunit binigyan ng discretion ang mga local government units na taasan ang venue capacity ng religious gatherings na hindi tataas sa 30% allowable venue capacity.
Individuals scheduled for vaccination will still be informed of the vaccine brand on site. This as the Department of Health encourages the public to take the jobs as soon as possible, regardless of the brand, for protection. The details from William Theo.
DILG Secretary Eduardo Año said that while the local government units are refrained from announcing the brand of COVID-19 vaccine they will use, people will still be informed once they reach the vaccination site. Año said that those who will refuse the brand will have to go back at the end of the line. MMDA Chairperson Ben-Hur Avalos said the measure aims to prevent overcrowding as more people prefer the Pfizer brand. Avalos said the planned brand-agnostic vaccination policy would not put the public in danger as they will be screened by a health professional and informed of their prescribed vaccine before inoculation. He also called on the public to pre-register with their local government units and wait for the appointment before going to the vaccination site. For Pasay City Mayor Emmy Calixto Rubiano, waiting for a preferred brand will delay the COVID-19 immunization program. Rubiano said the city government supports the order, stressing that all jabs, regardless of brands, are safe and effective. Meanwhile, according to the Department of Health, not announcing what brand will be available in inoculation sites will not take away the right of individuals to be informed of the vaccine they are taking, as the vaccination process entails on-site vaccine education, proper recording using vaccination cards, and monitoring for adverse events following immunization. Health Secretary Francisco Duque III said that as more vaccine supplies become readily available, everyone should take the earliest opportunity to get vaccinated to prevent hospitalization and even death. For the PNA Newsroom, I am William Theo.
The government is closely monitoring the rising number of COVID-19 cases in Palawan. Meanwhile, Iloilo temporarily closed the operations of some establishments to prevent further transmission of the disease. The details from Benj Bondong.
The National Task Force Against COVID-19 is currently monitoring the situation in Palawan amid the spike in COVID-19 cases, particularly in Puerto Princesa City. Mayor Lucilo Bayron attributed the surge to the easing of travel restrictions after the provincial government decided to scrap the RT-PCR testing for tourists. The Department of Health, however, said there is no evidence that the removal of the requirement caused the surge in COVID-19 infections in the city. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. is expected to bring antigen test kits to boost the coronavirus testing in the area. Puerto Princesa City is under a more relaxed general community quarantine until May 31. Meanwhile, the provincial government of Iloilo ordered the closure of resorts, hotels, bars, and parks effective tomorrow, May 22, until the end of the month. Iloilo Governor Arthur Defensor said there is a need to make adjustments to reduce the movement of people to prevent the further transmission of COVID-19. Defensor said the bed capacity of 10 hospitals in Iloilo City handling COVID-19 patients cater to the province, city, and whole of Panay. As such, bed capacity should be sufficient enough with the number of COVID-19 cases. And in Cebu, frontline workers at the Mactan Cebu International Airport have received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. Despite the pandemic, the airport in Cebu remains open to serve and assist passengers, especially returning overseas Filipino workers. GMR Megawide Cebu Airport Corporation President Louis Ferrer said the vaccination of frontline workers is essential to ensuring the continued health and safety of all who pass through and use the facilities of the airport. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Benj Bondo.
Indigent Filipinos will soon be prioritized for the Pfizer vaccine. This after President Rodrigo Duterte ordered that the said vaccine brand be given to them. Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque said the president had seen photos of the long queues for the Pfizer vaccine wherein social distancing was not observed.
Nakita po ni Presidente ang mga larawan ng mahabang linya ng Pfizer kung saan hindi na-observe ang social distancing. Kaya nanawagan po tayo na huwag tayong mamili ng brand ng bakuna. Ito rin po ang sinabi ng Presidente, hindi po pwedeng pumili ng brand ng bakuna. Pinag-utos rin po ng Pangulo na ibigay ang Pfizer sa mga mahirap o sa indigent population dahil yan po ang patakaran ng COVAX.
While the pandemic resulted in a shift to going digital in almost everything, most seniors remain non-tech savvy while some do not have internet access. This is why local government units must find a way to register them for vaccination. Interior Secretary Eduardo Año said LGUs should conduct house-to-house visitations to register them if needed. Año also appealed to the public not to be picky about the vaccine brand, saying all vaccines are safe and effective and would protect them from severe COVID-19. Private sector procured vaccines are expected to arrive by mid-June this year. Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez assures that the jobs will pass through unhampered. Dominguez said the jobs will arrive smoothly as the process for customs clearance will be the same as government imports. Meanwhile, PNP Chief General Guillermo Eleazar has ordered the use of police vehicles to ensure the speedy transportation of COVID-19 vaccines to the provinces. Eleazar said the speedboats and helicopters of the PNP Maritime Group and the Special Action Forces are on standby and ready for use to deliver vaccines in far-flung areas. The PNP Maritime Group has almost 200 floating assets that could be readily deployed, while SAF has 4 of 7 helicopters. Still to come, an official says community pantries are okay, but using them for ulterior motives is not. And the POEA wants to increase the 5,000 deployment cap on nurses. Details ahead. This is the PNA Newsroom.
Alamin kung paano ang tamang pagsusuot ng surgical mask. Una, hawakan ang mask sa strap at siguruhing natatakpan nito ang inyong bibig at ilong. Tandaan, ang may kulay na bahagi ng mask ang dapat nasa labas. Ito lamang ang tamang paraan ng pagsuot nito. Ihulma ang nose piece o maliit na metallic strip ayon sa hugis ng inyong ilong. Iwasan ang paghawak sa inyong ilong at bibig. Kung marumi na ang mask, hubarin ito gamit ang strap at itapon ito sa isang basurahan. Siguruhin ang maayos na paghuhugas ng kamay gamit ang sabon at tubig. Ang surgical mask ay dapat gamitin ng mga pasyenteng may sakit sa baga o mga taong mayroong ubo, sipon at lagnat, mga nag-aalaga sa mga may sakit, at mga healthcare at frontline workers. Maaari ring magsuot nito kung kayo ay pupunta sa matataong lugar. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP, at nang himpilang ito.
While the concept of community pantries is essentially extending voluntary help, a lawmaker said some people make a grandstanding by bragging about it and project a lame government. Representative Crispin Boying Remulla of Cavite's 7th District expressed his disgust with some individuals, some of whom were politicians who use community pantries to undermine and sow hatred against the government. In an interview, Remulla said he has nothing against community pantries, which reflects the Filipino culture of bayanihan spirit. But what he did not like is several of these critics are within the government and some are even his colleagues in the lower house of representatives. Remulla said that community pantries have been used to solicit monetary donations abroad through videos showing how poor Filipinos are and use these funds for political purposes. Following improvements to the PhilSys online portal, over 1 million Filipinos are now able to complete the first step of online registration for the national ID. The Philippine Statistics Authority said 1.05 million online registrants finished Step 1 collection of demographic data as of May 17. Including those who underwent physical Step 1 registration since late last year. About 34 million Filipinos already completed the first of 3 steps towards obtaining a Philippine ID. The PSA thanked those who registered despite experiencing technical difficulties during the pilot implementation. It said it is optimistic that they can register 50 to 70 million Filipinos to the PhilSys this year. The government prioritized poor families for PhilSys so that their national IDs will serve as a valid proof of identity whenever there's a need to distribute social assistance. Meanwhile, as of May 15, nearly 104,000 Phil IDs were already delivered to registrants who finished the first 2 steps nationwide. The Philippine Overseas Employment Administration will request the Interagency Task Force to increase the 5,000 cap on the deployment of nurses overseas. POEA Administrator Bernard Olalia said the request is in anticipation that the limit on sending Filipino medical workers would be achieved next month. Eulalia said that many are possibly looking to hire nurses abroad in the future. Based on their assessment, he said more than 3,000 nurses have already been employed overseas in the first 5 months of the year. He noted that they do not yet have any exact figure to recommend to the task force given the projected capacity of the healthcare system and the number of infected. Eulalia said most of the countries or the traditional market for nurses have requested an increase, namely the United Kingdom, Germany, Japan, Saudi Arabia, and New Zealand, among others. Bus rides from Legazpi City to Manila and back will resume at the city's Grand Central Terminal starting on Saturday, May 22. Mayor Noel Rosal said the initial resumption of bus operation in the city is in line with the resolution of the Interagency Task Force allowing bus operations to resume in the southern Luzon area. For the maiden trip, the Legazpi-Manila bus departs from the terminal at 6 p.m., while the Manila-Legazpi bus would leave the Parañaque Integrated Terminal Exchange at 8 p.m. Passengers are required to show a negative RT-PCR saliva or antigen test taken within 3 days before travel. They must show proof that they are authorized persons outside residence or with essential travel purpose and an identification card. Earlier, the city government of Tabaco and the town of Pieduran have also permitted P2P bus operation. In Leyte Province, a bus firm operating is currently implementing a 6-week free ride from Tacloban to Ormoc City and Biliran through the government's service contracting program. Visayas Liner started on May 14 the free ride for Tacloban-Ormoc and Tacloban-Naval routes as part of its drive to help commuters in the wake of the health crisis. The program will benefit bus passengers until June 30, 2021. The program was launched last November 2020 as part of the Bayanihan to Recover as One Act or Bayanihan 2. Visayas Liner is the second public transport to offer the government's free ride service contracting program. The first was Jeepco, a modern jeepney plying the Tacloban-Tanawan routes. A far-flung village in Ibi, Magalona, Negros Occidental will receive 1.4 million pesos in aid for the implementation of a coffee processing project. The project is a collaboration between the Department of Science and Technology in Western Visayas and the Association of Negros Producers through its Community Empowerment through Science and Technology Program or CEST. The collaboration will address the needs of coffee growers in Barangay Canlusong who are facing challenges brought by strenuous and costly production and marketing. Both entities will also coordinate with the municipal government to carry out the project's components. In Legazpi City, 5 farmer associations are expected to enjoy faster planting of palay seedlings this season through the use of transplanter machines from the City Agriculture Office. Recipients include farmer groups in barangays Buragis, San Joaquin, Buyuan, Arimbay, and Bagong Abre. The machines were given under the Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Program of the Department of Agriculture, aimed at raising productivity and profitability and strengthening the competitiveness of the palay industry. Likewise, palay threshers, hand tractors, and other farm equipment will soon be distributed to other farmers groups in this city. At least 1,400 hectares of rice lands are expected to be planted in Legazpi City this wet cropping season. Up next, an end to days of bloodshed. Israel and Hamas agree to halt the exchange of fire through a ceasefire brokered by Egypt. And digital learning for kids in a summer village is now possible. We tell you later how. Back after a quick break, stay with the PNA Newsroom.
Alamin ang tamang paraan ng pag-ubo upang mapigilan ang paglaganap ng Coronavirus Disease 2019. Ugaliing magdala ng panyo o tissue. Kung uubo o babahing, takpan ang buong ilong at bibig gamit ang panyo o tissue. Kung walang dalang panyo o tissue, maaaring gamitin ang braso na pantakip. Kung nakararamdam na kailangan umubo o bumahing, agad na dumistansya sa mga tao sa paligid. Huwag dumura kung saan-saan, gumamit ng tissue at itapon sa basurahan. Ugaliin ang paghuhugas ng kamay at paggamit ng alcohol o hand sanitizer upang mamatay ang mikrobyo. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. Parents of the rescued indigenous peoples minors in Cebu City have entrusted the fate of the case to the government and appealed for justice for their children whom they said were victimized and used by respondents of the Bakwit school. This came after the Office of the Provincial Prosecutor of Davao del Norte dismissed the charges against the 7 respondents for lack of probable cause and lack of territorial jurisdiction. One of the parents, Datu Butigon Mandakawan, expressed optimism that with the help of the government, justice will soon be served to their families. Mandakawan also appealed to the government to file charges against the members of the New People's Army whom he believed are victimizing their children. NTF LCAC spokesperson Lorraine Badoy said they will definitely back the parents and file for a motion of reconsideration. Earlier, the NTF LCAC said the government is readying charges against the same respondents for violation of the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act of 1997. World headlines now. Israel and Hamas reached a mutual and simultaneous ceasefire mediated by Egypt, which took effect on Friday. The Israeli Security Cabinet voted to end attacks on the blockaded Gaza Strip that began May 10 and accept the ceasefire. Hamas spokesman Sami Abu Zuri also confirmed the deal. Meanwhile, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres urged all sides to observe the truce. The UN chief appealed to the international community to work with the UN on developing an integrated, robust package of support for reconstruction and recovery that supports the Palestinian people. The ceasefire comes after 11 days of Israeli airstrikes on the blockaded Gaza Strip. A total of 232 Palestinians, including 65 children and 39 women, were killed during Israeli attacks which spanned for almost 2 weeks. The worst conflict in the region in years erupted earlier this month after Hamas fired rockets at Jerusalem following clashes between Israeli police and Palestinian protesters at a shrine considered holy to both Jews and Muslims. In sports, the Philippine Ascals have unveiled their 25-man training pool for the upcoming FIFA World Cup qualifiers in Suzhou, China next month. United City midfielder Stefan Schrock headlines the pool as the national team's captain. Also called up as vice-captain is Birmingham goalkeeper Neil Etheridge, whose brilliance at the post late into the EFL Championship season helped his club survive a possible relegation. The Ascals are set to hold a training camp in Doha for the WCQ. The Ascals must need to sweep their remaining 3 matches to solidify their chances of locking an outright spot in the 2023 AFC Asian Cup and enter the 3rd round of the WCQ. They are facing Guam on June 3, bubble host China on June 9, and Maldives on June 15. Despite unstable phone signal and poor internet access, learners in a small village in Santa Rita, Samar are now able to participate in digital learning. The 158 learners of Santa Elena Elementary School are using the intranet system, a private internet introduced and set up by Vinil Oquino, a Tacloban-based electrical engineer. For 2 months, Oquino's team completed the installation of infrastructure in Santa Elena and formally turned over the system to the school on Wednesday, May 19. The intranet system includes the installation of a server inside the campus. The data uploaded by teachers are transmitted to households through antenna set up within the community. Both the student and teachers can access the system via network connectivity using Wi-Fi-enabled mobile devices and computers. The DepEd Samar Division has already expressed its interest to replicate the project in other areas in the province. Here's another look at today's biggest stories. Going for the gold. The government approves the priority vaccination of athletes for the Tokyo Olympics and the Southeast Asian Games. More sectors are also included in the vaccination priority list. Strengthening faith, religious gatherings in Metro Manila are now allowed at 30% capacity as the region is currently under GCQ with heightened restrictions. Help non-techie persons get vaccinated. Local government units are ordered to find ways to register seniors and those who don't have internet access for inoculation. And a ceasefire brokered by Egypt between Israel and Palestinian group Hamas takes effect, putting a temporary halt to the relentless exchange of fire that left deaths and a trail of destruction. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, visit our webpage or head on to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also watch us on television on PTV4 and the IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know from the PNA Newsroom. We tell stories that inspire change. I'm Marita Muahe. Have a good day.